Welcome back. We had Chuck Fleischmann, our congressman, on last week, and this week we're going to talk about things internationally. We want to know where the hot spots are. He's on foreign ops. He knows things. We talked about energy, his specialization, but we'll be a little more historic today. We're going to talk about things, and I guess we'll just start, Congressman. Welcome back this week.
Thank you, Alan.
Let's talk about Wagner. Let's talk about Russia.
Sure.
What's the real threat? Who is Wagner? I mean, that's what Americans are saying.
Sure.
Who is Wagner? Sure. I mean, we got Russia, we got Ukraine. So what's Wagner? Is it a Russian group of people?
Let's start, they're mercenaries. Let's start with International Relations 101. What is a mercenary? Mercenaries have been around historically forever.
The
Hessians were British mercenaries. The Swiss Guard for our papal states. The Pope has and still has the Swiss Guard. They don't fight, but historically they did. A mercenary is a soldier for hire. Right. So you can go out as opposed to a national. There are Russian troops who have invaded Ukraine who are Russian nationals fighting there against Ukrainian nationals. But the Wagner group is a group of mercenaries, so this is a paid fighting force that is actually theoretically supposed to be fighting for Russia in Ukraine, and they were. Something happened recently which is staggering and shocking. The head of that group, for whatever reason, became very disillusioned with Russian leadership. Specifically, the Russian defense minister did not mention Putin by name, but it's vicarious to Putin, because when you attack Russian leadership, you attack Putin. And what he did was shocking. He turned his troops, about 25,000 troops, tanks, towards Russia. They moved into a city, and this was interesting. The city basically welcomed them. It was a smaller city, and then began, if you will, a march towards Moscow. And they got about 120 miles away from Moscow, and then they reached an agreement.
How many people were in this independent force that was
25,000.
Wow.
Okay, so it was a small mercenary force, very well armed, very well trained. Remember, these mercenaries are soldiers.
Is pretty good size.
It is good size. Now let's put it in historical perspective. The Russians have always been very paranoid about foreign incursions into their country. Napoleon burned Moscow. A lot of people don't know that, but Napoleon actually burned Moscow. The Russian winter got him, and it took its toll getting over there. Hitler never got there. The German army was stopped outside of Moscow and then driven back and ultimately defeated by the Red Army. But the Russians have always been very wary of incursions. If you can imagine a mercenary army of 25,000, very well trained, very well armed, coming towards Moscow, about 120 miles out, and allegedly they have reached an agreement with the Russians and have stopped. But who knows? Very, very surprising development. No one saw it happening, and it just shows you just how difficult and bad things are
in Russia. So the demographics of this group would be mostly Russian?
Yes, no question.
Okay. There may be some others, but this is basically an independent Russian force, not paid by, not government soldiers, but
That's
obviously
right.
Independent.
Soldiers for hired, mercenaries, right. Yes.
So they would fight somewhere else.
That's right. You could hire, mercenaries are hired by governments all over the world to fight. They're paid fighters. The problem with mercenaries, if you read Machiavelli, don't read too much Machiavelli.
Yeah,
but if you read Machiavelli in The Prince, he talks about the downside of mercenaries. He cautions against not using them because he said they don't have their heart in the fight. But be that as it may, they've been used historically successfully for years. But this was a major development in the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
In our world, that's kind of like we have a big cash available, but we don't have any door knockers. We don't have any canvassers, so we go out and hire 20 canvassers.
That's right.
To come in and work our area that don't even live here.
It's a
we don't
perfect
do that,
analogy.
But some people do. But that's what they did.
It is a perfect analogy. You will have people basically say, I am available for any campaign, and we've seen groups like that. Sure. That is so right on point.
They usually stay red or blue, but other than that, they don't.
That's right. But we'll knock for you, or we'll knock for you. Our price is so much per door, and have a nice day.
That's exactly right.
But
And
I
that's what
want
they do.
our people, like Beauchamp people, knocking on that door saying,
Yeah, well,
look,
yeah, well-
I like Fleischman.
Yeah, we
Okay, I like
Fleischman hadn't had
Lucid."
any opposition in
Yeah,
8 years.
that's
I mean,
exactly right.
With all due respect to Sandy Casey and everybody.
Yeah.
Just a formidable,
That's
close election.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Well, that's because the people,
10,
thank
12,
goodness.
and 14, and it went away. That's what happens when you fight. If you fight a lot, people begin to say, I don't want to do the fight.
That's exactly
You
right.
get hit and you get up, you get hit and you get up, and all of a sudden, that's where it's at. And strange things happen in politics.
And we get Fleischman loyalists who are not mercenary.
Right.
They're for me
American
on
loyalists.
Monday,
People
Friday,
American.
and Sunday.
American.
Yeah.
People back you because of the job you do.
Thank
Nobody
you.
wants to, I mean, it's just you've worked so hard. Everybody will tell you, Robert Kennedy's a phenomenon right now.
He is.
And you knew Robert Kennedy in early years.
I've met him. I know his cousin,
Yeah.
Joe.
The redhead.
Redhead from
Who's
Massachusetts.
he from Teddy? He's from Teddy, right? He's in the Teddy lineage?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
And he actually was named after Joe Kennedy, who was Jack Kennedy's dad. And of course, one of his sons, the son that got killed in World War II, actually blew
Yeah.
up. The Kennedys fought very
the oldest
valiantly
Kennedy's
in
name?
World War II, great patriots. But be that as it
Joseph, I
may,
can't remember.
Joe ran against Markey and lost in Senate in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So
So he's out of the house.
yeah. But I know a lot of those folks. I met Sergeant Shriver's son. He actually works with Jennifer Garner on Save the Children. They were up the other day and met with Jennifer Garner, a very nice actress, working on Save the Children issues. So
I'm just going to leave that totally alone. I'm not even going to say anything.
yes.
I love Jennifer Garner. I think she's kind of a talented actress.
Very talented.
Very attractive, obviously.
but her
Does she
heart
know her
is-
issues?
Yes. Well, she focuses, she's smart, on issues that Republicans and Democrats can come together on. Saving the children. We've done the baby caucus with her before.
Who is her husband now? Was he with her? Very famous. I don't remember which one it is.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but she's been up there a couple of years,
Yeah, very nice lady.
a couple different years. You had the same thing with Tom Berenger a few years back. Remember you? were friends
Oh,
with
Tom
was
Berenger.
your buddy,
Yes,
yeah? A lot
absolutely.
of people up there do. His is.
Great historian, by the way.
Does he know a lot?
He knows a lot of history. That's right.
People don't realize that
Yeah.
sometimes when
Yeah.
you get into stuff
Well,
like that.
it's interesting. Actors and professional athletes, they want to know what we do. It's a very interesting situation. I can remember talking with Scherzer when Scherzer pitched for the Nationals, and he goes, "What is it like?" And he was just so interested
Max,
in my
right?
judge. Yes, and pitched for the Nationals now with the Mets, but. Be that as it may, and he said, "What is it like? Wow, it must be incredible." And I said, "Thank you. This is the job I do every day, and I cherish it and the like." And I said, "But what's it like to be paid $10,000 a pitch?" So now, I'm good. I don't get anything per pitch.
That's a lie.
That's right.
It's kind of
I'm
like
lucky if I can throw strikes
It's the
anymore.
Michael Jordan deal. It's been in the movies recently. It's
Yes.
that, I want something off every shoe.
Yes.
Well, the guy says, "What do we got to lose? Give it to him." They made
right.
a lot of money on that deal. But anyway, okay. So we understand Wagner. We understand where we're going. Why did Russia not just run over Ukraine? I don't understand how Ukraine was stood. Were the Russians that weak, or was
Yes.
Ukraine that strong?
Russia, I won't say was weak. Russia was inept. And its allies, and Russia does not have many true allies in the world. One, unfortunately, is China. The Chinese have been underwhelmed and surprised by the lack of Russian military astuteness. You've got a very well-financed army, but they've gone through conscription.
Afghanistan was a long time ago. They haven't had a major conflict in 40
Right.
years.
And when it was Afghanistan, it was the Soviet Union. Now it's the Russian Federation.
Oh, that's
Big
true.
different.
True.
I mean,
Less of a pool.
that's correct. And I will say this. I don't think Russians, particularly Putin, ever got over the demise of the Soviet Union. That was probably one of the
I
biggest
think that's
events
his
in my-
driving force. I mean, when you
Yes.
read about him,
Yes.
basically he's trying to restore that sense of pride and that stuff to him in a kind of a chaotic way, maybe.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
When the Soviet Union collapsed, it was international news. It left the United States as the world's only superpower. And the reality is, China is a formidable foe in many areas, but we are still the world's premier superpower, militarily and the like. But Russia has just disappointed itself and its allies. And the other thing about it is Ukrainians are fighting for their country.
Right.
The Russian army has
It's a pretty big
invaded
country, 80 million people.
It's a big country, and it's a large agricultural country. It's a very large expanse.
It's hard to get, when you're going with ground troops, it's hard to cover, right?
Indeed.
But
So-
the western side has never been, the western side of the country that borders Poland has never really fallen in any way. It's been pretty intact, right?
That is correct. Although, when we were looking at what Russia might do in Ukraine, we thought that they might invade in some of the northern eastern
areas, come down,
provinces, down from Belarus and the like, where they actually probably had some internal sympathizers.
That's correct.
And or in the Crimea. But they have just not done well at all. The Ukrainians have fought hard. There's been a lot of casualties on both sides, but Ukrainians are fighting to protect their homeland, and there's a big, big difference in when you're fighting people who are protecting their homes, their families, their loved ones. You're going to have a formidable opponent, and the Ukrainians have fought hard and well.
Let's talk about China for a second. We've got
Sure.
any other European threats, any other European concerns outside of Russia?
Economically, yes. Militarily, no. The EU has some strong competitors with us, but China is the number one formidable threat, I would say, not only militarily, but economically and the like. They have a long-term plan.
Are they stronger economically than we are?
I won't say stronger. They are about as large.
They got more cash on hand?
They've got more of their cash on hand. They own a lot of American debt, which is sad. They buy up American debt.
And real estate, and other stuff.
And real estate. They are on a march, a long-term march for what they would term world domination. They've got a long-term plan. They're strong in South America. They're strong in Africa. They bring a model which sadly has been successful. They'll go into a country and say, we'll build you a road. Okay, we want a road. We'll build you a nuclear power plant. We'll build you
Bridge, yeah.
anything, a bridge. Well, how are you going to pay for it? We'll pay for it. Now they can't pay for it. Okay, if you can't pay for it, how about you let us put a base here and that? So it's been a successful model. The United States has got to be more astute. We've got to come up with ways to counter that.
But the consistency of that argument is, that's the way it's been done for 5,000 years. The guy with the money
Yes,
who comes in, who's willing to make the deal. The Romans had certain long, far out
they did.
territories, and they did the same kind of deals.
Roman Empire, fascinating. Actually, with the Romans, though, they wanted people to be part of Rome. It was a very interesting thing. They'd come out and say, look, we want you to join us. If you join us, we won't attack you. If you don't join us, we'll attack you and get you anyway. But yes, but the Chinese have been aggressive. They've been successful. We still have major technological advantages.
Sure.
We have major military advantages. Our nuclear arsenal is better. They do have nuclear arsenal. Our ability, the American military ability to move logistically, troops, supplies, is second to none. And I think that's something that stands out. Now that we are properly funding the military, I'm doing that as an appropriator, we want to make sure that we have the best planes, tanks, munitions, trained personnel, but we've got some work to do.
You know, what about India? Big place, lots
Yes.
of people, and I've never met an Indian that wasn't smart. I mean, very, very impressive people.
Let's talk about India. Modi just came to Congress,
Okay.
addressed a joint session. India now, population-wise, is the world's largest democracy. But it's a fascinating country. If you recall, former British colony,
Yes.
got its independence after World War II. They agreed to fight
1947.
for the Allies. And when they did that, and then, of course, India broke off between India and Pakistan largely being Muslim,
Sure.
India largely being Hindu, although India does have a lot of not only Hindus but Muslims as well. Modi's having to deal with all of and a lot of Christians as well, but primarily Hindu. India is a growing economic power. Now, they are a nuclear power. We can never, we talked in some of our other shows about the 10 or so nuclear powers in the world. India is one. Pakistan is another, though. So that is the check in that system. Their largest adversary would be probably Pakistan.
Is it a hostile border?
It is a contentious border. It is not as hostile as it was. I think the fact that they both are now nuclear powers and both have their set priorities, it's not as hostile as it was. I think there'll always be that built-in tension.
But the Indians, unlike the Chinese, the Indians don't have a worldwide domination plan.
That's correct. What India has focused on is building the Indian economy. You're seeing a larger growing middle class and upper middle class in India. But you've got a country where a lot of languages are spoken.
Sure.
And that's very important. You've got
so you have
regions.
Mandarin Chinese over here being 1 billion plus people.
Yep.
Over here you got Sanskrit and other things that are working, right? So does India have a uniform language that most of them use?
A lot use the English language because
Yeah.
it's the language
British, sure, they
of commerce as well. So most Indian people I meet from India or in this country will speak English and their local dialect. Having said that, India has made tremendous strides. Again, a nuclear power, their economic base is growing. Internally, their consumption, as countries gain more affluence internally, we've seen this with China. There are more demands on their economy. Oddly enough, they have cozied up a little bit, in my view, too much to Russia and not so much China, which is interesting. I think India, and this is an opinion, not a fact, is viewing China as more of a competitor than Russia.
Don't you, geographically, doesn't that make sense?
Yes, it does.
I mean, you know,
It does.
And Russia seems to be waning a little bit. That's when you
much
start
so.
making crazy accusations and threats.
That's exactly right.
in that situation. So you've got India and you've got China and you've got Pakistan. Where are the traditional Japanese and Koreans in the world?
Worried.
Okay.
Worried. Our friends in Japan, our friends in South Korea, and our friends in that part of the world are very concerned. Taiwan is very concerned.
How is it
about-
still independent? Why didn't China just go across the water?
Because they don't know what our response will be, and they don't know what the response of the West will be. And would it start World War III? Maybe. We have made the United States
And there's
other
not a
nations-
lot to gain by going over there. There's nothing over there, right?
Well, let me say this. Taiwan produces so many of the chips that are used in the world by the United States and like. If mainland China ever attacked and God forbid took them over, we would have a situation where we right now would not have the chips capacity to keep up. That's why I credit Senator Haggerty with his bill to get domestic chip production back in the United States that was passed in the last Congress. Brilliant idea by Bill Haggerty because he realized you lose Taiwan, you lose your chips, you lose
And
your
nobody
economic.
knows more about Japan and China and those areas than Bill
That's
Hager.
correct. Bill is fluent in Japanese. I was at a dinner
In Anderson County this week,
Yes.
visiting, I believe it was Iceland, I can't say for sure,
Yep.
but, I mean, and they have great respect for him.
Within the past few months, I was at a dinner, utmost respect for Bill
Oh.
Haggerty. It was me and Trump and Haggerty. We were talking, and they were recounting the relations between Abe, who is now dead. He was assassinated. This is the former Japanese prime minister, and how Haggerty, who's fluent in Japanese, was working with Abe, and Trump wanted something done. And if you know Donald Trump, and I do, when he wants something done, he wants it done. And they were both recounting the fact that Haggerty had to go to Abe and say, it was a trade deal, this needs to be done by Monday morning, and Abe did it. Abe did it. But Japan is concerned. Why? South Korea is concerned because of the potential for North Korea aggression, which is still out there. They're firing missiles. They've had some mishaps, fortunately. They are not there totally technologically yet, but they keep trying. Donald Trump kept North Korea in check. Joe Biden cannot do that.
How is President Trump? I know you've seen him a couple
President Trump's great. Affable as ever, determined as ever. when I got the MVP in the recent
Baseball
congressional
game,
baseball game, deserve it or not, you take your wins.
Sure,
That's right.
sure,
That was
I'll
great.
take one.
It was a surprise. Got a lot of hugs and a lot of accolades. Next day he tweeted out something, "You're my MVP."
Yeah.
So that made me feel
He's
good.
always liked you a lot.
So that is good. He's doing well. He's running for president.
Health is the issue with him, I think. All of them.
He's healthy. He's sharp, and he's determined. But Marshall, Bill, and I and some others had dinner with him a couple months ago in Nashville, and he's doing well.
Good. Glad to hear it. It's going to be a crowded field.
Very crowded field.
Yeah.
Republican field is very crowded.
Very crowded.
So
Well,
I think that helps Trump, actually. The more who get in, take away a little bit of a piece of the pie. I'm surprised at some of the folks that got in, but that's their choice.
Let's take a break. Recognize our sponsors, our good friends IB3, Navarro, and Oak Ridge Utility District. We really appreciate your support of this program with Congressman Fleischmann.
All right, crew, let's get started. All right.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
At Navarro, we partner with our clients to advance clean energy and deliver effective solutions for complex challenges in the nuclear and environmental fields.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
Daniel Forrester has been recognized as one of East Tennessee's leading attorneys for nearly 2 decades. Civil disputes, criminal defense, divorces, and juvenile custody cases are all part of an impressive resume. Daniel's legal experience also includes representing clients in local, state, and federal courts. A husband and a father, Daniel is a Rule 31 certified mediator who has represented hundreds of families in Chancery Court. Call Daniel Forrester Law Office at 865-457-7900 for a free consultation. Birchfield's is Oak Ridge's premier dining spot. They offer an incredible breakfast buffet that's just $14.95 and it includes your drink. But they also offer Eggs Benedict and pound cake French toast. From 4 to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, Birchfield's offers happy hour specials including 50% off appetizers and special prices on drinks. Plus amazing dinner entrees that are served from 5 to 10 p.m. Enjoy an unforgettable dining experience today at Birchfield's, located inside the Doubletree Hotel on Illinois Avenue.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
We should never lose sight of our health. To keep moving forward, let's not forget everything we've learned. Limit the salty food options. Make your own daily exercise routine. And always receive regular checkups. More than anything, we have learned how important these small steps can make a big difference, so we can all continue to move forward together.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. We're talking about international affairs with Congressman Chuck Fleischmann. He's on the Foreign Ops Committee, and he knows a lot about it. And we were just talking in the break about Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere. You know, 2/3 of the world's population, I believe, that's a guess, lives north. And you got Australia, you got a few places south. Obviously, Africa's major, and some others. But it just seems like over the 5,000 years of world history or longer, the Northern Hemisphere has dominated. And I don't know why must have been something. Why wouldn't we have more stuff going on? Tell me about Africa. Let's talk about Africa.
Yes, a great continent, fascinating countries, still in many ways suffering from the effects of colonialism. If you recall, the British, the French, the Portuguese,
we're still less than 100 years from that. That's
the
right.
Italians, all had colonies there. They had rich histories before then in the countries. In some areas, I think you have to make a delineation between North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, because North Africa, where you've got Egypt and a lot of the other countries,
Right.
are more tied in closely, I would say, to the Middle East, although a lot of regional conflict. Right now, there's a conflict between Egypt and Ethiopia over the building of a dam that the Chinese are building in their country, dealing with the precious water of the Nile. So fascinating continent, tremendous amount of resources. It's just it's an interesting situation, country to country, very different, unique countries, and we're seeing a lot play out internally, politically, and it's a spot where our adversaries are wanting to grow their influence. I'll be specific. China has really been very active in Africa, across the continent. But the United States is still building strong alliances there. Our friends in Europe are working there with trade partners. But fascinating, large, beautiful place.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't think about it in those terms, but you're right. The only real history, Nigeria's got to be a force. I mean,
yes,
they're providing half of our priests in East Tennessee. We know a lot about Nigeria.
Yeah, I remember Father Bede very
Father
well.
Bede's the best. I mean, he's in Johnson City now. Been for about 6-7 years.
Was it St. Mary's? It used to be great. You'd walk into Mass at St. Mary's and say,
I've told that story
Congressman
on
is
the air.
here. Yes.
I've told that story in the air. My son, Congressman Fleischmann, is my son's godfather, and my only child, and he's the priest is Father B from Nigeria, who used to be a soccer player for Nigeria.
Yes.
Is baptizing, and in the ceremony you pour a little over the child's head. You pour a little water. So he hands me the thing, and I pick it up. My wife hands it to me, and I look at him, and he goes, "No, give it to the congressman. You don't need to do that."
You want it to stick.
He was a tough conservative too. He really was. And remember what he said to you? He said, "You never miss a vote." That's what impressed him.
Yes, indeed.
He's a hard worker.
But
he's been
at
at East
the highest
Tennessee
voting
State.
percentage of
He's
anybody.
been at East Tennessee State, and he's done a great job up there. So, but Nigeria has a lot going on. Of course, you got
oil.
And they got tribalism, though. They got real problems between Muslims and Christians over there.
They do.
South and the north.
But again, that
I'm thinking
battle
through
for
African
resources.
countries, yeah.
And a lot of African countries want to develop civil nuclear power. And that's where we've got to be so careful with the Russians and the Chinese, who offer really a better model. We will build it for you. We will finance it for you. We will fuel it for you. We will take care of the spent nuclear fuel for you. And I've had foreign leaders tell me the Russians and the Chinese will give us a tangible proposal. The Americans will give us lectures. And what we're going to have we're going to have to get beyond that lecture and say, look, like we're doing in Eastern Europe with the Czechs, with the Poles, with our friends, the Romanians, who have come to me and said, we don't want Russia and China, we want American nuclear technology. What do you have to offer? So hopefully we can bring that technology to other parts of the world, make it a great American.
Who would they negotiate with in American government to do something like that?
Usually the Department of Energy and private contractors, but largely through DOE. Our friends in Finland just signed an MOU with the Department of Energy. So
it's so interesting that nuclear energy is a clean energy.
It is,
and we've had so many things happen, and yet I always like to talk about France, who 78% of their utility comes from nuclear energy. They've never had any issues. Probably the most liberal country in Europe in a lot of ways, in Western Europe. But they and a lot of Frenchmen were involved in early science. But I mean, the bottom line is that they recognize that right away, and I think other countries do too.
The French are independent, especially since World War II.
Right.
They've showed that independence with their break from NATO, right? When they had their own defense force.
Do they have their own defense force still?
Yeah, and I can't pronounce it, but in nuclear, they have been leaders. They're competitors of ours. They actually go in and compete, but one of the things that they do is they reprocess their spent nuclear fuel.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
In America, we call that nuclear waste. They call it spent nuclear fuel. 95% of that fuel rod can be recaptured. Right now, Americans are getting back to looking at reprocessing. We actually put some money in the energy and water bill. I did about $15 million to look at reprocessing in America.
What are the options on reprocessing nuclear fuel?
Well, the French use a format that has worked about 50 years. The problem with the French model is it produces about 1% pure plutonium. That becomes a proliferation risk for some. Not for them, they're already a nuclear power. I think that would work, but America is looking at models that make that plutonium, if you will, inert or tied up so that we could do that. Either that or what we do in America is we store it. So we've got spent nuclear fuel rods literally stored all over the United States at certain sites. It's expensive.
Could they be utilized for anything?
Yes.
Well, what's our problem?
Okay. Our problem is that President Carter decided in the late 70s not to have America reprocess, and therefore we don't have a repository. Yucca is dead for all intents and purposes. As long as Nevada
That's something I know a lot about. No sense at all not to have Yucca open.
That's correct. But Yucca is the law. But I'm telling you, Yucca will not happen as long as Nevada is a key swing state. They wanted it until they didn't want it. Texas wanted it until they didn't want it. So we've got to look at other options.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is the amount of spent nuclear waste increasing every year?
Yes, because now there's not a lot of it, but volume-wise. But as nuclear power plants you utilize these rods, we get spent nuclear fuel rods.
Okay.
But again, if you reprocess or recycle,
and is there enough plutonium in that process to be a threat?
Yes, in the wrong hands.
Right.
But again, if you have a country like France that's already a nuclear power that has a non-proliferation program, it does not become a real problem. But it does produce 1% pure plutonium the way that they do it. America has come up through our national labs with ways to reprocess that can make that plutonium a non-factor.
We're going to have to be careful with our national security projections because Mr. Gleason's in the studio now.
Sean Gleason is in the house.
He's an expert on those things. So
he's an expert. He's a great American.
Great
Marine,
American. No, Marine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely he was.
And an elected official right here in Oak Ridge, right?
Well, some things are good. Some things are rain.
I hear he had a pretty good political...
Yeah, he did. He did all right. We did all right with a newbie. He was a newbie, but we did all right with him.
We did all right.
Let's take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk a little more international security. Thank you, Brad.
All right, crew, let's get started. All right.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
At Navarro, we partner with our clients to advance clean energy and deliver effective solutions for complex challenges in the nuclear and environmental fields.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
Daniel Forrester has been recognized as one of East Tennessee's leading attorneys for nearly 2 decades. Civil disputes, criminal defense, divorces, and juvenile custody cases are all part of an impressive resume. Daniel's legal experience also includes representing clients in local, state, and federal courts. A husband and a father, Daniel is a Rule 31 certified mediator who has represented hundreds of families in Chancery Court. Call Daniel Forrester Law Office at 865-457-7900 for a free consultation. Birchfield's is Oak Ridge's premier dining spot. They offer an incredible breakfast buffet that's just $14.95, and it includes your drink. But they also offer Eggs Benedict and pound cake French toast. From 4 to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, Birchfield's offers happy hour specials, including 50% off appetizers and special prices on drinks, plus amazing dinner entrees that are served from 5 to 10 p.m. Enjoy an unforgettable dining experience today at Birchfield's, located inside the Doubletree Hotel on Illinois Avenue.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. We're all sitting here in the studio talking about different things. Chuck, what's the biggest threat to our national security as Americans? Give me more.
Our national debt.
Wow.
Our national debt. And I'm stealing Admiral Mullen's line on that from over a decade ago. We're $32 trillion in debt. When I went to Congress, we were $15 trillion in debt.
That sounds like a confession.
Yeah, no, and we have to be honest with the people. The driver of most of our debt are our mandatory spending programs.
Yes.
Okay, which are the sacred cows that nobody wants to talk, that are not even appropriated for. When we talk about all of the funds that I'm able to procure for Oak Ridge and for the great state of Tennessee, we're telling our listeners the truth. But that is such a small part of the federal budget, about 20 to 25%.
The debt itself is what? 40%?
Oh, there's interest on the national debt, which is staggering. But why do I call that a national security
risk? I want to know that.
Okay. During World War II, the United States, in order to ramp up spending to win the war, issued war bonds. Buy war bonds. Remember that? Americans owned American debt, 100%. Now, 50% or more of our national debt is owned by foreign countries. So Americans do own a portion of our national debt, but we're paying interest to China. We're building them their ships and their planes. So think about that. If China is your bank, if these other foreign countries are your bank, and you continue to borrow, it's a problem. So that, I would have to say, national debt. The second thing is the lack of education about our civics. I think we need to teach American history and be proud of American history. From our colonial times forward. This revisionist history that the radical left is trying to impose and reach our students, particularly in the public schools, I think is detrimental. I want American students who will be our future to grow up to be proud of our military, proud of our history. No country is perfect, but the United States is the strongest, greatest nation the world has ever seen. We've talked about in our other shows about other countries, we've talked about Rome, we've talked about other countries and their dominance at a particular time in history. The United States is unique, it's special, I think it's blessed by God, and we need to teach that, preach that, and the lack of that, the lack of knowledge when I talk with young people about history, that concerns me.
Yeah, I think you're speaking, I was thinking in material context, but I understand what you're saying. Of course, debt is material, but I think you're right. I think that, what's a good analogy? I go to get a pickup basketball game. They jump high, but I'm not sure they're going to be as good as they were 30 years ago when we hit and we banged and we played all day. I just think it's a different culture of kids. I mean, it's a different thing.
It is. But technologically, let's be optimistic. The younger people have these gadgets, and they can do wonderful things with a computer, with a cell phone, all different types of technology. They are so far ahead of where I was, and then I think even the couple of generations.
Depending on what ahead means.
Yes, but they can utilize technology, and we talked about AI before, all the different technologies that are coming out. Younger people are able to use it in a fashion that people like myself, who were just glad to see fax machines come along years ago.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Or the big portable phone in the car.
Yeah.
With the wire on it.
That's right. They're passé.
So that's my 20s. You were a teenager at that time, but
Indeed.
it was different. Well, I learned a lot from it's in our background, IB3, and Sean's taught me a lot about international stuff. And you made a comment earlier about that our network of people, intelligence, and other people are the best in the world. That we can move things. Our logistics is better than any other country in the world.
Military logistics, America has that such an advantage over China, over Russia. We've seen the Russian debacle in Ukraine.
I can't believe
we talked about a mercenary force actually at one point in time driving through Russia towards Moscow. American logistics, we can move men and material better than any other country. You get there the firstest with the mostest with the bestest, and you win.
Top 3 allies to America.
England, Canada. Wow. Trying to.
Well, let me give you a basketball analogy on those two. They're not starting.
Yeah.
Those two aren't in my starting lineup.
Well,
so you're going to have a little bit more pop on that. Who else have we got? What does Canada do? I mean, no respect to my friends in Canada. My grandparents were from Canada. I'm Canadian heritage, but
Canada is a nuclear power.
Okay,
Canada has abundant agricultural and energy resources.
Yes.
Canada is large. It's a big border country to the north. They have helped us historically as allies. England, largely because
are
of
you
their
thinking
strong
in history, or are they still matter?
Historically, they still matter.
But today they still matter as an ally.
They still matter as an ally. Strong nuclear arsenal, very, very close working relationship with the United States.
We're their child, right? I mean, that's it.
Yes, and I would just say the international business presence. I mean, English is still the international language of commerce. French is the language of diplomacy.
Country we haven't talked about the Middle East. Maybe we need to get over there.
Okay, Israel. You got my third. Israel is our third big ally.
Because of their positioning over there.
Absolutely.
They could even be one or two. But I get your point. I mean, not size-wise, okay, but there's your Middle East.
Yes.
Okay, I'll throw a name out. I'll throw a country out. We'll talk about them for a minute or two, and then we'll go on to another country. Let's talk about Iran.
Dangerous. Iran, after World War II, became a strong ally of the United States. Iran under the Shah was a very, very strong ally. And they were a check in the Middle East to the power of a lot of other countries, specifically Iraq and the like. After the revolution, and I lived through the revolution, it was like 1979.
Graduate school. Yep.
And I can remember that vividly. They've become a radical theocracy. They have shown a desire to move towards being a nuclear power. That is dangerous. The question is, where are they on the weapon grade side? You've got to be 90% to be, or actually north of 90% really to be weapons grade. I don't know exactly where they are, but potentially a major destabilizing force in the Middle East. And now that the big check on them, Iraq, was largely defeated and now is weak, there's really no other major check on Iran. And recently, brokered by the Chinese, a rather historic agreement with the Saudis. The Saudis had always wanted to be the large, strong Sunni leader in the region, always very hostile towards the Shia, largely Shia, Iran. Now they are talking, now they are working together on a deal brokered by China. So potentially...
Oil? Defense?
Oil, defense. They've got a lot of commonalities. And then you look at where our allies are.
Turkey.
Egypt. Well, Egypt is still a U.S. ally based on the Camp David Accords. I know President Sisi well. I've spoken with Sisi at length. I've been in his office in Cairo. But Egypt is a large country, but it's a poor country. It doesn't have much oil. It doesn't have resources.
Turkey's kind of stuck in the middle there. It's kind of caught in a base there. I don't know.
Let's talk about Turkey. Turkey, NATO member, one-time strong ally, but Turkey under Erdogan, who recently surprised the world with the magnitude of his win. A lot of folks thought he was going to lose. He won. What does that mean? Turkey under Erdogan has moved stronger toward a less secular state.
Sure.
Ataturk brought Turkey in the modern era many
But
ways.
in the same
Western-
situation, so is
Yeah.
the southern United States and the Tennessee legislature. I mean,
Well,
you know,
my
I'm not
friends.
trying to be funny, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, I argued in a speech yesterday, I said, everything's becoming tribal. America's becoming tribal. You got the Northeast. No, it's a little more philosophically tribal than personal. But you get that in Eastern Europe. You get it in the Middle East. You get it in other places. From Khomeini, as you mentioned. I mean, it's become more tribal. We're more, this is who we are. We can't bring, the melting pot theory has not had a good 50 years.
Well,
Go ahead.
sadly, since I've been in Congress, we've seen a greater polarization. We've
Shit.
seen greater differences. And yes, there are certain parts of this country that
Reflect those things.
they not only reflect, but they espouse an ethos that I think is detrimental
Us and
to
them.
where we are as a republic.
That's right.
And we're seeing that in voting rights. I mean, states that are actually going out and saying the winner doesn't win, you can have plurality voting, or you can have first, second, and third choices. I talked to some other
Yeah,
people.
they do that in New Hampshire, right?
They do it in,
Vermont?
let's see, they do it in Massachusetts, they do it in Alaska.
That's to protect your person. I mean, I've looked
They
at the
do it in
system.
Maine.
Yeah, Maine.
My
That's the
friend-
one we know most
Maine.
about, Maine.
Yeah, my
Colin's
friend,
in trouble.
yeah. And so there's a lot of different things going on. The Supreme Court just recently ruled. You're going to see some redistricting of states, particularly in the South. And it's going to be very interesting to see where the dynamics are. But largely in the southern United States, we see conservative legislators, both at the federal level and the state level, conservative governors, states that are doing well, low tax, low regulation.
Yeah, economically, it makes sense.
Makes sense. We're seeing states in the north that are fiscally defunct. They've raised taxes beyond the pale of reason. Their regulations, business people tell me that they just can't do business there anymore. And unfortunately, the vast majority of their legislators, even at the federal level, vote that way.
Yeah.
They reflect their
Try to stay in their
populace.
job, keep
Yeah.
their job.
So that's where that is.
And I'm not sure that's not bad, but you need to go back to your populace and talk about different kind of strategies. I
Yes.
mean, it's different. I'm kind of grouped on that. But I think tribalism, especially on a religious basis and other things, whether you look at Iran, Turkey, or anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I always tell the example, the Soviet Union held everything together for 70 years. Bad or good, they held it all together. They disbanded in the early 90s, and there was immediately civil war all over the map.
It's interesting
The
you say that.
Muslims and the Christians, they've been fighting together for 70
We
years.
fought, and I fought for years to defeat the evil empire, and Ronald Reagan,
Sure.
my hero, did that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, there was always talk of spheres of influence. They had theirs and we had ours, and the whole issue of mutually assured destruction and
Yes.
and the like was there. But with the dissolution and the rapid dissolution of the Soviet Union
Rapid.
into the Russian Federation and all these other countries, we had border countries actually left with nuclear arsenals.
Yes.
Now, some of them actually stood up and said, "We want to get rid of them. Come and get this stuff out of
Yeah,
there."
I remember.
But a very, very difficult and dangerous scenario that I still think is playing out historically with Putin and the Russians. I don't think Putin ever got over the dissolution of the Soviet Union into what it became.
You make an interesting point on the weapons. Here you got, not peasants, but you got working class or people that have overthrown or they're in their own world, and all of a sudden they got nuclear weapons. They're thinking, you have to have an infrastructure, some knowledge, and some people to maintain or operate that.
That's right.
And they're thinking, this is way out of our league. Get them out of here.
Come and get it.
Yeah.
And the United States does a better job, I think, than any country in the world in nuclear non-proliferation. What I mean by that
Yeah, well,
is
heavily involved.
we want to go out and if bad stuff exists, go out and get it and work to dissuade countries from developing a nuclear arsenal. We do a good job there. And we've really got to do and continue, and we fund this to be able to go out and get the bad stuff and secure it so that it doesn't fall in the wrong hands. And there's various gradations of bad stuff out there. but when we find it, we deal with this. And we do this with a great degree of international cooperation, actually.
Yeah.
Other countries are glad that we're in that business.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that technology, communications, and the expansion of our abilities to do that has helped us control some of that. In other words, when you put it in a suitcase with a bowling ball, and there were no ways except for a radar to go with the gun machine, but now we have so much technology. Don't you think it's harder for any side to do anything in secret as it was? Well, it was a lot easier 20 years ago. I don't know.
Absolutely.
You're right.
When a country, or even if there's any type of an emission, whether that's on the civil side or on the military side, tests a weapon, we know immediately because we have ways to test that, to monitor it, to discover it, and we can actually get it really right down to what that radioactive event would be. Yes. By the way, we're part of the IAEA, which is actually based in Austria, and they do tremendous monitoring of that.
What would you like to see change? Well, what concerns you the most in our country?
Oh, my goodness. I would like to see more red states. I would like to see more conservative Republicans elected across the great United States. I'd like to see more conservative judges. I'll be specific, judges who will actually sit there and interpret the law, whether that's the Constitution, a statute, an ordinance, and not be judicial
What do they call
activists.
those jurists? There's a name for them.
Strict constructionists.
Yeah, constructionists.
We like strict constructionists. The others are judicial activists.
Yeah.
And many of the folks on the left prefer a more active judiciary, and that would be, in definition, they would read things in. The great overturning of Roe versus Wade with the Dobbs decision, when they broke it down in terms of what was there and not there in the Constitution, one of the conservative justices says, my gosh, there is not anywhere in the Constitution a protection for abortion. There is just not. It's not in the document. In Roe versus Wade, judicial activist judges read that in, okay? And we just don't need, I picked that as one example, we need judges that are strict constructionists. So more conservative judges, more conservative legislators, more people who are elected to office, like myself and a lot of your clients, who've had experience in the private sector. They've owned a business, they've run a business, they've had employees, they've had to interact, they've been problem solvers. The private sector solves problems. Government is lethargic. Problem comes up with government, especially at the federal level, and they step all over each other to try to fix it. And many times they don't. They just pass the buck.
You know, I joke in my own town, you know, we have a $5 million, you know, they're getting ready to revamp the Civic Center into a convention center.
Wonderful.
But we got potholes running from my house all the way to Boeing. Boom, 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 but we can't get filled up with concrete, you know. So local government's a good measurement of how hard it is to get a lot of things done. But, and Sean and I were talking about this last week, it's an old town with an old infrastructure.
Yes.
I mean, it's very, very old, and we've got to put money into rebuilding some of that thing. And to be honest, you know, we get, the more young people we get involved, I'm ready to turn it over. I don't mind consulting, or I don't mind being the Wagner of Tennessee politics, or whatever I am, you know.
Yes.
I don't mind going out.
You're loyal.
I'm loyal, yeah.
You're not a mercenary. You've been very, very loyal. You've been very loyal to me in my political career.
Well, your family, though. I mean, you know, that's a little bit different.
And our friends. But, and that's a bellwether. But yeah, infrastructure. I have to talk about the Oak Ridge water plant.
Yeah, we forgot.
Important.
You got $5 million for that plant.
I got 5 and 3 and 5 again.
That's 13 in Catholic schools.
So yeah, that's right. That's good. I'm glad you did the math for me. So
that's fantastic.
That's important. Oak Ridge needed a new water plant. DOE turned over its old water plant. It was antiquated. It wasn't working, and for whatever reason, we could never get the Department of Energy, that does a lot here and does a good job here, to buy a water plant or to fund a water plant for the city of Oak Ridge. It's needed it. And because the city of Oak Ridge has a smaller population. We did not want that to be spread among the taxpayers or among the ratepayers.
Yeah.
They just could not afford it.
I don't know what percentage DOE usages have, and it's like, why
It's
12
very
minutes,
high.
but it's getting close to,
Yes,
it's getting up there.
and
they should pay
the
fair share.
They should, and it's a safety concern too. You always want to have a
Oh,
good,
listen to me.
safe
You had the
water
same
supply.
experience. We got
Yeah.
the same phone call every 2 weeks for 10 years.
Yeah.
For Warren Gooch, it's going to break today.
Yeah.
Give Mayor Gooch credit. He stayed on the water plant
Absolutely.
and everything.
So we're going to get that funded. We've broken ground there. But you're right. This is a city with an older infrastructure. That's why when we're tearing down legacy facilities under EM, on nuclear cleanup, and we're cleaning the ground down, this is where we're ultimately going to build a great Oak Ridge Airport. That is a priority for me. I know it's a priority for a lot of our elected officials, but there's so much
Business
more.
leaders.
And our business leaders. But we're attracting new businesses. I will go out to the old K25 site, ETTP place, and look, and we're seeing new businesses come in on former legacy land that was in the DOE portfolio. It's now on the Oak Ridge tax rolls. It's now hosting new cutting-edge companies. It's really inspirational when you see this. So this great traditional city, Oak Ridge, now is spawning, giving birth to great new American industries.
Yeah, and I just think there's so much potential, and it's not an Anderson County phenomenon, but there's so much potential going west into Roane County, where we have an airport, we can build new businesses, and a lot of the leaders here locally, and a lot of our younger leaders, have talked about the need for almost a fourth OEM, like a major anchor business in the West that would bring 2,000 employees, something like that,
Yes.
that could work out there, and we could build around it and get some of the future that we really need. Oak Ridge could move ahead. They shouldn't be sitting on 3 OEMs that they depend on 24 hours a day.
Understood. And that leads me into a discussion. We've got to have workforce development.
Yeah.
Our community colleges, our larger schools, our tech schools, we have got to make sure that our workforce is well-trained, that they can use the new technologies, that we have opportunities out there. These are good-paying jobs. I don't care whether they're union or non-union. I want them well compensated. I want them well trained, and I want them to stay here. I want people to choose Oak Ridge, Anderson County, Roane County as their home.
That's it.
Because we're seeing that in Hamilton County, people wanting to stay. When I came to Hamilton County from Knox County in 1986, there was a brain drain. Young people wanted out.
Yeah.
If we were lucky, they'd go to Nashville. If not, they'd go to New York or Atlanta. Let me get away. Now they're coming home. We're seeing, just drive along Illinois Avenue here in Oak Ridge, when you see the mall. When I was elected, that was dead over there.
They've
It
done a
is
good job.
vibrant. It is beautiful. I mean, they've got every major eatery. It's uplifting.
Yeah.
That's a
They're doing
place where
better.
people want to say, I want to come back and live in Oak Ridge, and I want to shop in Oak Ridge.
Just talk about my 2 or 3 sponsors real quick, and we can skip over Daniel for now. He's a good guy. You know Daniel Forrester.
Good guy.
But I mean, we've got Navarro and Susanna. Does a great job.
Susanna is a wonderful lady. She is an American success story.
Yes, she is.
She built a business starting in the 90s. It rivals a lot of the businesses here. She wins a lot of contracts, not only here, but
other
across
states.
the country. She's just good at what she does.
Yeah, and she's got some good people around her. I mean, one of the stars, this is my opinion, is on our DB board. It used to be over at
She's great, isn't she? Yes.
But Ryan Overton? You know
Ryan, yes, I know Ryan very well.
That's what we need. We need more Gleasons, more Overtons. We need people out there that can help us do the job.
How about Gleason? Say something nice about Gleason.
Okay, I got him back here. So we got his thing here. It's his logo. He probably paid $20,000 for that, knowing him, but that's okay. But okay, so anyway, IB3. Sean is his national security influence is growing.
Yeah, first and foremost, great United States Marine.
That's correct.
2 terms, I believe.
Yes, 8
2
years.
tours.
Yeah.
Yep. And good guy. This is
Playing a role.
Yeah, but he chose Oak Ridge to come here and to build his business.
That's
and
true.
to
It's
lead.
not 5-6 years. And he sees the future. He
Yes.
sees the future.
That-
We
that's
appreciate
right.
him helping us so much.
I just put him as my choice on the Tennessee Valor Corridor Board, and I don't
Yeah.
choose that lightly.
Yeah.
So we need people like that who care about our community, who care about their business, care about the free enterprise system, and care about others as well.
I also want to mention, I don't know where you interplay, but Oak Ridge Utility District's been a great sponsor.
Yes, they have.
They've been
Thank
good to
you.
me. And Doubletree, who we support, me and you support a lot. We're getting ready to get off the air, folks. 2 straight weeks with Congressman Fleischmann. We'll be back at Christmas, November, December, with 2 more shows. But he's doing a fantastic job. We're very
Thank
lucky.
you.
Thank y'all so much.